Hello, hello, YouTube. How would you like to take a gander at the wild world of wizarding war crimes? Well, that's what I have prepared for you today. I got a good slew of footage, most of it me playing in a fashion of a wizard who has no sense of right or wrong. So, a typical wizard. Most wizards have no concept of right and wrong. Morality does not concern them. You ask them if they have a conscience, and they don't know what that is. That's standard for wizarding. It's a requirement, a prerequisite. You have to make sure you have your conscience surgically removed, or perhaps you were simply born without one, to enter the world of wizarding. The build was on screen if you are interested. And I must say, I had fun with this build. I say that every time. It's true. I don't show you the not fun builds. That's just how it goes. And thanks to my Flame Specialist build that I did last time, I had a little practice with one-handing a straight sword, which was rather nice. Because it's a tough setup, to say the least. The more I play other builds, dexterity builds, strength builds, faith builds of varying kinds, and then int builds, I feel like of all of the more viable builds, int builds are kind of the bottom of the bracket. Mostly because if you want to play them in a melee sense and not be, you know, projectile spammy all the time, just throwing big comets out, you know, a pure wizard, and you want to mix it up a little, your damage is a little subpar. Maybe that's just playing at level 80. 81, I think, is where this character's at. Perhaps that's the natural consequence. Now, the build isn't unusable by any stretch of the imagination, much like the Pyromancer build if you want to combine those melee flame incantations with your sword and have a good mix of them and deal great damage. It's going to take a little bit more skill and a little bit more practice to get accustomed to the play style altogether. And there isn't anything wrong with that in the least bit. Learning to use a one-handed straight sword, I think, is a stepping stone to me eventually doing another swordboard video, you know, with a medium shield and a straight sword, and actually being a little bit of a competitor to those I'm fighting. On screen, this is one of those fellows who thinks they're cool by hanging out in a little boxed-in area and then summoning a high-level NPC phantom to do their dirty work for them. So what do? I kind of run out the clock. I hit him with the war crimes over and over, and then the host gets smart, but not too smart, because the other red comes in and gives him the big old chomp, and he's gone. I don't know why people would do that. I suppose what the idea is, you know, I want to gank an invader. I want to make him feel bad. So what do? I get to a high new game cycle on a relatively low-level character, or just a middle game character, and then that, you know, the Phantom, the NPC Phantom, scales with the new game cycle. They always have obscene amounts of health. And that's the way it goes. You bring them in to deal with your invader. The invader can't just feasibly do that many thousands of damage without dying ultimately. But it didn't work out for him. No, he didn't level Vigor all the same. This is an unfortunate clip that I decided to include because, we get the guard break and there's the no damage. And it just feels so bad. This guy was a little latent, and I wonder if that latency is what did it ultimately. Because I would get the critical hits, but it would do that little bit of a desync or whatever, where the animation wouldn't line up, and you get no damage. Ugh, I felt so robbed. Breaking his guard twice, getting the crit both times, and then getting no damage in return. He was a tough person to fight against because of his latency. And he was over-leveled, it looked like. He had a lot of weapons in his soft swap slots, if you were paying attention there. So he's probably a high level, trying to find a way in, break his guard multiple times, wanted to show that off, but doesn't matter how well I do. The fight doesn't last long enough because the other red does his job wonderfully. Takes down the host, before I can get another attack in edgewise. And I think if I were to state a flaw of the build, it's your damage feels bad against those over-leveled phantoms, and to be fair, your damage always feels bad against over-leveled phantoms. They have that flat defense that doesn't feel like it's getting downscaled. It probably is a little, I just don't know how much. I don't have the math for that in front of me. But I will say this, I love the Night Maiden's Mist. It's the war crimes, it's the dirtiest part of the build, and you can just get a lot of tasty chip damage. Look at those fellows in there lingering, and for the cheap price of just a couple points of mana, I'm able to take away a couple hundred of their health on each one of them. That's about a flask each, especially if it adds up. The build did teach me a little bit about patience, because it's not the sort of build that doesn't have anything on it that can full to nothing people very quickly. Not unless you're very good at your timing and spacings, which I'm working on. There's nothing surprising. There's no Stormhawk Axe, there's no Greatsword with Braggart's Roar that can deal 1800 damage across 2 hits that they're locked in place for. Nothing too wild like that. It's a lot of chips. You can get good hits, and they do considerable damage. But there's nothing incredible, I should say. Nothing that you don't have to work for. And so it taught me how to be patient, how to kind of outweight my enemies and look for my openings, try to find my one-on-ones. You know, all those sort of good things you learn when you're trying to become a better invader overall. And it's rewarding, because you piss people off, and then they make dumb mistakes. They stay in your face when they really shouldn't, because they're just fed up with you, and it works. It's a funny mind game. It seems cowardly, and, well, that's because it is. Everyone who commits war crimes is cowardly. Pfft, don't you know? There's nothing machismo about war crimes. No glory to be gained there. I do love the backstab into his face, though. That's a fun little moment caused by latency. But he was determined to hit me with a cannon of Haima, even at point blank. Couldn't tell you what was going through his head. I mean, other than my carrion slicer. Back to my main point, a subset of that patience is playing defensively. In fact, that's, I would say, a core part of the patience is playing defensively. Because you don't have the craziest damage output, you kind of have to chip people away bit by bit, just because I'm not using anything incredible. And there are parts of the build that would be better for what I was doing. I'm using mostly a staff and a straight sword. I do have access, because of my stat layout. I can use a great sword. I can use a heavy thrusting sword, but I kind of wanted to use spells in the offhand. That was the goal. And to get those pseudo carrion spell into straight sword combos that exist, mostly for style. They're not real combos. They're not true combos or anything. They're more like flashy strings of abilities you can throw together for a good time. And why wouldn't you want that? So, the build it has tools. You could always take this layout of stats and use it with a Moonveil, and you'll have a great means of chunking. You can use a Godskin Stitcher with, magic damage infusion and the Freezing Mist, and you can soften people up with the Freezing Mist, and then you can poke them to death, and you can have a very good weapon with that. There's plenty of things you can use. The Glintstone Chris, for one, is a dagger that comes with that glintstone dart, and it might as well be a comet. It hits pretty hard, comes out fast, has good tracking, surprising range for an Ash of War. You have options. There are things you can do that will hurt people and chunk them in great ways. Heck, you have access to Twin Blades, which you can Frost Infuse, and then use Spinning Slash on some poor sucker, and it'll hit them many times because of the nature of Twin Blades. You have access to Death's Poker, if you want, and you can hit people with those Ghost Flame Explosions if you got your timing and spacing down. Because you have a good int pool, those Ashes of War will do quite well. You have options. I mean, worst comes to worst, you could always use 2 Merkman Spears, those Clayman Spears. And, you hit him with the frostbite, hit him with the magic damage. You have options. There's things you can do if you absolutely need to melee fight. But I wanted to focus on the spell casting and the the sorting for the most part. The little straight sword. That was fun for me. If I hadn't already accidentally gathered too much footage for this video, I would have probably played with those weapons and done the spells a little less, but I digress. It's all there. I've justified myself enough to you. I want you to enjoy the footage, and hopefully enjoy my nonsensical rants. Ooh, we do have a little principle of the maging spell sorting that's about to happen, so keep your eyes glued on that screen there for just a moment. It's coming up quick. It could pass you by if you blink. So I talked about pseudo combos, and that's like carrying Slicer into carrying Greatsword followed up with a Straight Sword Slash or stuff like that, or hitting somebody with a Gavel of Haima followed up with, you know, a carrying Greatsword or what have you, or maybe carrying Greatsword into carrying Piercer, or no, is it Slicer into Piercer? Probably. But look at those 2 Azula Moonblades melted that guy. That's not what I'm talking about, though. So, you can string a lot of things together. I'm trying to get a better game feel for them. But look at that, carrying Greatsword into Straight Sword R1. That's tasty damage. That's one of your things you need to get good at when you do a spell sword build. I need to use the carrying Greatsword better. I need to do my spacing better. I've seen it works a little better sometimes where you face away from the person, you start your cast, and you 180 for the last part of it. And I think the idea behind that is you're hitting people with the end of the carrying Greatsword to give you just a smidge more time to hit them with your Straight Sword R1 or whatever you're chaining that into. So, something I need to do myself. Just because I have the build doesn't mean I'm proficient with it, which is rather unfortunate. And I should probably juggle my builds a little bit less so I can get good, but hey, we're here for the war crimes. We're not here for the tech, not necessarily. And I will say, this build was phenomenal if I ever had crabs in a bucket or fish in a barrel. Fish in a barrel is a more apt metaphor for this. But these poor guys, they can't go up the ladder without taking far too much damage. They have to play very defensively. And I'm able to just throw things at them. I got the bow for, you know, shooting at them if I so choose. I can hit him with frost pots. Hit him with more of the war crimes mist or what have you. And just make them regret their lives. There's nowhere they can go, really. They have to find a way to damage me. And this is why I believe in varied builds. This guy throws a spear at me. I was genuinely surprised he didn't throw more spears at me. Maybe it's because it didn't do the most damage. But my goodness, 200 damage on that bow, and then 71 he's gone. He didn't have a whole lot of health, unfortunately. But watch the arrow I fire at the end of this clip. It does something really odd. Choo! You see that? I don't know why it went down to the left. That's, I need to calibrate the sights on my bow or something. That's, it's shooting a little down to the left. Have you noticed that? This is another one of those fish in a barrel situations where I'm able to endlessly harass these poor fools. And that one Phantom has the right idea. He pulls out his great bow to rain arrows on me, but it doesn't work. So if you're familiar with this part of the map, you enter in from one side and you drop down a ledge that's just a little too tall to get back up, and your only way out is that stupid ladder. And so if your enemy invader's at the top of it, you kind of have to wait for him to come to get to you, and hopefully he doesn't have as many tools as I did in this situation to harass people. Look at this. I can lock on and spear call ritual with the ritual death spear around corners. That's some nonsense. I felt dirty doing it, but it was one of those situations where I knew if they all got up there, I would be in a world of hurt. They looked well equipped. They may have been a little over-leveled, I don't know. But either way, I'm able to just get in hit after hit, harass them. And that poor guy, he's still trying to get me with the great bow, but he can't lock on for a long enough period of time. Nor am I, you know, stuck in one place long enough for that to be particularly effective. Feels kind of bad for them. But hey, those war crimes come in handy, keeping them off the ladder. Spear Call's ritual. I was talking about things that hit hard if you really need some burst. That's not the stereotypical way I like to play the build, which is just sword and spells. Yeah, Spear Call ritual. You can be a dirty monster with the spear. Oh my goodness. Gets some damage, hits an AoE, comes out surprisingly fast. I'm sure if you built around it, it would be far better and far scarier, but hey, that's another tool you can have in your back pocket if you decide to take the build in any capacity. Completely your call. Still, now he's trying to, the poor Phantom down there, he's trying to get me down there with the gravity ability on the Radahn's Greatswords, and here we switch to the Chris. This is our big projectile. In the end, his friends left him for dead, and I slew him on the ladder. What an ignominious death. And I meant that in the sense that it's a shameful way to die, not necessarily that he was deserving of shame. That's taken it a little too far. I don't know what this guy wanted. I think he probably wanted for me to wait for his friend. And I had a fight with him earlier and his friend. And I didn't include the clip because I basically showed up and the other red just minced the host. So that random invader, far better than I am, but this was a great little exchange. It was a long exchange, mostly because I feel like I'm doing well, and you'll see it in a moment, the part where I'm doing well. But I don't understand these people who hang out in Limgrave. See, I'm chaining my hits together. I'm doing all right. And he leaves because he wants to heal. He goes to chug and he gets interrupted. I should have switched off of Glintstone Stars. It's just a little too slow for what I needed after that first heal. But I digress. So this guy, he is fully invested in just healing, and you can't compete with that. When you are a phantom, when you are a red, you are an invader, you have half the flasks you do in your own world. So that means at maximum, you're going to have 7 health flasks, but you're probably going to have it mixed up. You're probably going to have like 5 heals, 2 mana or something, or 6 in 1, or what have you. I think on this character, it might even be 8 and 6 is my spread. So that means I get 4 and 3. 4 health, 3 mana. And there's no way with 4 health flasks am I going to compete with his potential to have 14. I don't even know if I see this guy use his mana. He might have a mana flask or 2, but even if he has 2, that means he has 12 health flasks I have to tear through. And I did the math when I killed him at the end to see what level he was. He was level 82, so we were, I think, almost the same. I'm 81, he's 82. Pretty good matchup. But I get a lot of those nice hits with the straight sword, and you might see them from time to time where you hit somebody with a hit and then you just go for the R2 and you hit them at the end of their roll, and it is so good. It's so good. Completely and wholly unappreciated, I feel. If I could get that lunge R2 on the broadsword, that'd probably be my favorite weapon. I would love that more than anything. I love the raw damage of the broadsword. I like the way it looks. I don't even want a critical modifier on it. It's fine. I don't need that from the other straight swords. I just want the good R2, that thrust. Oh, I feel bad for the broadsword because of that. But maybe I should start using the longsword. I don't know. But the Lord Sword is just as good. Get a little extra damage on those crits, even if the scaling's a little worse. I digress. The R2s are wonderful, and you'll see it a couple times across this invasion. It can interrupt a Zweihander, a colossal sword. If you hit him early enough, it can interrupt them, which is great. I don't understand the hyper armor when it engages on the Zweihander, but there's times where he goes for a hit, and I'm able to interrupt him. And it's good. It's good stuff. I do wish I was a little better at connecting my spells as well as my straight sword hits. I feel like they are separate separate entities that I have, and they are not working together. I'm not gelling them just yet. But one day I will. How many more of these utility wizard, war crime wizard spell sword videos will you put up with until I get good? I don't know. That could be any number. Hopefully you're enjoying them from the get-go. I know I'm having a blast making them and examining my own footage critically. Look at that. Do you see that R2 after the roll? Oh, feels good every time. I feel like it surprises people. Like, people don't expect you to, I don't know, use the full moveset. And I'm not even using the full moveset. There's a crouch poke I could be utilizing. I don't know what situations I'd use it in, but it's there. And there I make the mistake of trying to menu when I should have gotten space first. That's on me. But I was getting tired of this guy. I knew I didn't stand a chance of depleting all his flasks before he depleted mine. And I didn't feel like having quite that style of a war of attrition, so to speak. So we get him with the running R2 or whatever on the good old Boonvale, and we roll catch him with the Ash of War, and it does good enough damage to surprise him. Because I was hitting for, what, 200 something with the straight sword, and suddenly an Ash of War from the Boonvale's hitting for like 500. That's a pretty night and day difference in terms of threat level, at least in the level 80 bracket. It's not phenomenal by any means. It could probably be better. Especially if I had, like, my Wonders Physic going, and I had the, I think I did have the Shard of Alexander on. I think I swapped to it for that hit specifically, but hey, another thing that the War Crimes Wizard is excellent at is, do you need to keep a field boss alive for whatever reason? Nightmane's Mist makes him really hard to approach. I don't think them killing this guy sends me home. That's probably other enemies, so he might not count as a field boss. There's a version of him that is totally a field boss. But, you know, he's another one of those big enemies that turns into a regular enemy. But you have the ability to just harass and agitate and war mists and roll for the backstab. I've been getting more of those recently, and I feel it. And it feels so very nice to finally start to understand certain aspects, which is very silly, given how much time I've put into the game trying to get better and learning and things like that. It's nice when things are starting to click. You start to really enjoy yourself. And the game has its ups and downs, for sure. But I'm having a grand old time. And I'll admit, this clip didn't show off a whole lot on my end. I'm just keeping the boss alive, and he's doing the heavy lifting. He's shooting those fireballs that hit so hard. And I mean, that's all you really need to get done. I could have watched and seen if they killed him. I probably should have, but Warcrime Wizard has no sense of right or wrong. And that's just what you should expect. If you see a caster, he has no sense of morality, no sense of honor. Don't expect it, even from me. There's a curse, a perpetual curse for anyone who uses int builds where they just can't conceive of right and wrong. Nothing you can do about it. I'm being facetious, of course. I love int builds. I love them the most. And I want them to be the best, and they're not. But they are good enough, and I have a good time playing them, and I think I want to do another version of this character where I focus more on the weapons. I might not even change the character. I might just swap a couple of the talismans and play them as is. The stat spread's not bad. 45 vigor, 45 int. Could be worse. I don't know what this guy was waiting for. It was kind of bizarre. Waiting for nothing in particular, but clearly Taunter's tongued, at least to some degree. I think if you're on your own and you turn on the Taunter's tongue, you only get one invader, but if you, of course, get a blue or another phantom in your world that's friendly, then you will unlock that second invader slot. But I had those clarifying boluses, which help immensely against those dirty frenzy builds. But hey, this person went for the horribly timed heal over time spell, which created a nice opening for a tasty backstab. Here's another thing you can do on a lot of builds. Shamshear. A lot of harassment. This clip was a lot longer, and I shortened it down for your convenience to the part where it gets juicy. But the Shamshear is a wonderful harassment tool where you can just get in and out, you can make some quick hits. Especially with people playing as passive as these two were, it was great. Like passive, but still like lingering in an area. Not the good kind of passive, the bad kind of passive, where they're bad at being passive. There's people who are great at being passive in PvP, and those people are a nightmare to fight against, because they just wait for openings and they whiff punish like there's no tomorrow. And heck, now that I'm thinking about it, the Shamshear is also one of those things I should need and ought to practice, because it's a really good little tool. And when you get those hits together, you can scare people, and I don't even think I use the Ash of War. I probably should. I need to learn how to use Sword Dance now that they made it viable again. But there's a lot you could do, and this clip's wonderful because I show off the Chilling Mist on the good old Godskin Stitcher. Even though I think the Great Epee would probably be a little better with my dex. I don't have a lot of dex or a lot of strength. I didn't really feel like it leaned enough to be worthwhile since it was magic infused anyways. But I like the way the Stitcher looks more than the Great Epee. But we can hit him with a Chilling Mist, and you do great magic damage, and Chilling Mist is more than enough frost proc for a heavy thrusting sword. Look at that. Oh, you can just get in people's faces when they make dumb decisions, and you can make them regret their lives. Look at that. You just poke at people. And because they don't have a phenomenal amount of armor, it keeps stumbling them, and thankfully they had each other to keep themselves alive. Otherwise they would have been in some real bad trouble. But it's nice to have options, and I wish I'd utilize them a little more. I noticed that sometimes it's my last few clips I get for a video where the build's starting to click. Look at that! Glintstone Chris. Might as well be another spell in your bar if you can swap to it fast enough. Oh boy, does it hit hard. And hey, this is the one reason I want to have 20 points of dex on the build. It's in case I need to poison somebody because the fight's taken too long for my liking. And I want to know how high level that guy was. Dual wielding those colossal swords and still wearing the scaled set? That's pretty heavy. That's really heavy. I wish I'd killed that guy. I want to know what level he was. I was trying to kill him. I really was. He's just a big beefy boy. And I'm just a little wizard, just a little witch hunter, just a little war crimes wizard. And I love those backstabs. Oh, new backstabs feel good. Thanks, patch 110. Even a fool like me can get backstabs. Even a fool like me can pull out Moonveil and make people regret their lives. Ooh, that damage is too good. But watch this. Frostpot, Moonveil, deleted. Oh, it's too good. But thanks for joining me. Enjoy your day, and have a good one. Bye-bye now.